Hi guys, Monos here. So today I'm going to be off topic and just share some of my thoughts and observations about the war in Ukraine and how the West, in their haste, I think missed a golden opportunity. If they really wanted to isolate Russia, they missed the best opportunity given to them. Probably they'll never get such an opportunity again. All war and conflicts are bad. I really hope this conflict in Ukraine can end and end soon so that all the people are spared the horrors of war. Anyway, so this is a site where I'm seeing the current map of the occupied Ukraine. They've also put Crimea there, so depending on which side of the fence you're sitting. Anyways, so as you can see, it is quite a substantial bit of Ukraine that Russian and Russian allied forces have of Ukraine. But when you're watching the mainstream media, they really miss all these subtle nuances. They just go all out crazy with news and headlines that don't actually fully show how the conflict is playing out. Then the other thing is the mindset of the Western media and the mainstream media is they're of the view that the world is these countries in the bottom. This one here, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and the US. When in reality, the world is really huge. There are other continents and a whole host other billions of people out there. So each time the media comes out and talks about the world in regards to this Ukraine war and conflict, they are basically talking about the Western world, their views, opinions, and the likes. And even when they talk about world sanctions against Russia, they're talking about sanctions from Western countries. And then they don't also report the full picture of those sanctions. The EU sanctions on Russian oil, gas, and energy and other things, they don't mention the fact that these sanctions are going to be staggered over time. They're not immediate. Some of them will start in future periods, and or the fact that the EU countries are still buying Russian oil and gas even today. And they make it look like it's India and China who are financing the war in Ukraine by buying Russian oil and gas, but they won't mention the fact that they're still buying oil and gas from Russia, which theoretically is also financing the same conflict. Then the other thing which the media really got wrong at the start of the conflict, they wanted to make it look like the war in Ukraine is the only serious armed conflict out there in the world. There are so many other armed conflicts. There's a one in Yemen where hundreds of thousands of people are at risk of famine and death for the past couple of years. You've got so many conflicts all over here. There's also the conflict in Libya, which I think NATO, it was a NATO-led intervention that got rid of Muammar Gaddafi. So if you are living outside of the West, you are either bordering a country that is currently at war, civil conflict, or has just come out of a war. You have probably grown up living with refugees from neighboring countries and other countries. So the rest of the world is familiar with war, the horrors of war. And some of them do blame Western countries for conflicts that happened in their countries or neighboring countries, proxy wars or wars that were aided and abetted by Western nations. So when the media does try to portray the Ukraine war as a unique conflict among dozens and dozens of other conflicts around the world, or as the worst conflict in decades or it's really being untruthful. And I think that what has alienated a lot of people outside of the West. It brings in issues of double standards in reporting and all. You even had some news journalists showing people how to make Molotov cocktails. What they are promoting and encouraging in Ukraine is what they discourage heavily in other armed conflicts all over the world. So I think that the Western media has really got this conflict wrong. Even when the conflict started, they really made it look like it's the first time they're seeing refugees, when literally a couple of years ago you had hundreds of thousands of Syrians fleeing Syria, going all the way into Europe, into Germany. And us in Africa, we keep having refugees coming into our borders every single day, week, month, or year. So it really was bad reporting. Then they also did try to make it look like China and India and China are the only countries that are still buying Russian oil and gas, and they're the ones who are supporting Russia. But meanwhile, I think the foreign minister in India, on a panel I saw him discussing the issues and answering questions, pointed it out very well that what India is buying is still a fraction of what Europe buys on the daily. And you also have a lot of pro-war analysts on these mainstream channels who they are trying to make China stop buying from Russia, but they keep on bringing China and Taiwan, with hinting that there'll be a possible military conflict over Taiwan. And it just makes logical sense that should there be a military conflict, where do they expect China to buy their energy and gas from, or any other things they'll be deficient in if they get sanctioned over a conflict in Taiwan? The most logical answer is Russia, the former Soviet republics, and a lot of countries in the global south. So it automatically and logically means that China cannot be in the forefront of sanctioning Russia, because they do know that at any point in the future they probably would need Russian support to bypass Western sanctions against them. So some of these things are logical. And then also you have seen in this conflict that US and Western sanctions have made it really, really difficult for there to be alternatives to Russian oil and gas. Countries like Venezuela and Iran, who would have probably picked up some of the slack from Russia, are themselves heavily sanctioned, and they can't immediately bring in their energy on board to bypass the sanctions. And you've also got a whole host of other countries that are already sanctioned or in the process of being sanctioned and all. Then now, when you come to the way the Ukraine conflict is being reported, it reminds me of some time last year in 2021 when the conflict in Ethiopia was being reported that the Tigray rebels were about to seize the capital Addis Ababa in about 2 weeks or so. And it's been many months later, the rebels never seized Addis Ababa, and it looks like they never were close to seizing the capital. It was just pro-rebel propaganda that was being pushed as news, and how the mainstream media fell for that pro-war propaganda from the rebels. So how the mainstream media fell for that, we really don't know, and we can only guess. When it comes to suspected war crimes, Russian war crimes, I think the media also misses some introspection on, I think in 2020, the US did pass some laws where they made it that they actually did impose sanctions on, or proposed to impose sanctions on the International Criminal Court to prevent them investigating suspected US war crimes in Afghanistan and other conflicts. So that, I think, has flown under the radar. You also have in 2020 as well, the UK did want to pass a law that would give their soldiers immunity from suspected war crimes in active war zones like Afghanistan. So anyways, as I'll end this by showing the world map, the world being the ones in red. If the West continues to report the world as if it's just the West, I think they'll lose a lot of, they'll get a lot of people in non-Western countries asking questions and all that would make it a little bit more difficult to get people on board with sanctioning other countries and all. And so this conflict, we're going to see how it ends, and then we'll also see whether sanctions as a coercive tool has come to an end, because if Russia survives all these sanctions and continues trading with most of the rest of the world, including Europe, we'll probably see whether sanctions will still be a thing that is just thrown about anyhow. But I really do hope that the conflict in Ukraine ends. I hope the conflict in all the other active war zones also ends. Anyways, I just thought I would share some of my simple views and all. I'll try to leave all the relevant links I used in the description. Thanks for watching, guys. Mulos, bye.